All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Jordan Uhl with you guys. Jordan is the host of the Insurgents podcast as well. So big show ahead for you guys. Potential war with Iran, latest developments on that, and what folks are threatening. And we'll try to help sort out who's on which side on all of these issues, because it does get complicated. Later in the program, ICE, are their actions popular or unpopular? Which direction is that going? There seems to be a very clear trend. And so we'll talk about that. And then funding of Israel has become so unpopular, Israel's beginning to be against it. Interesting development. We'll tell you more about that later in the show as well. All right, Jordan, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right. We've got some heavy stories. We've got an interesting one in the second hour that I'm curious to see how you handle that one. What do you say we get started with this?
Yep.
There seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent, if you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it. And we're looking at some very strong options. Iran wants to negotiate this. We may meet with them. I mean, a meeting is being set up. But we may have to act because of what's happening before the meeting. But a meeting is being set up. Iran called, they want to negotiate.
I know what you were thinking in the beginning when he was talking about a government acting through violence and that it might have to be checked. ICE in Minnesota, right? No, he was talking about Iran, of course. And the question now at hand is, are we going to attack Iran again? And is it really for the people of Iran or is it for Israel? Of course. So that's the conversation at hand. And we're gonna sort out for you guys what the facts are, what certain powerful interests want us to do, and then we'll tell you what we think we should do. So here to give us the facts, Jordan Uhl.
Now, as you just saw, yesterday, President Donald Trump announced that he's weighing, quote, strong military options against Iran. But he's also in talks to meet with Iran's leaders. In the meantime, Iran is readying for conflict. In a briefing to foreign ambassadors in Tehran, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araki said the country is not looking for war, but is prepared for it, according to multiple media reports of the address. Speaking of other countries' leaders, Barak Ravid reported that the Trump administration is consulting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu discussed the protests in a call on Saturday, according to 3 US sources. A US official claimed the call was, quote, routine, and also dealt with Gaza and Syria. According to Ravid's reporting, the Trump administration is weighing military intervention, but they're considering many other non-kinetic options as well. Many inside the Trump administration think major kinetic action at this stage would undermine the protests, 2 US officials said. Other options include steps to deter the regime, like announcing an aircraft carrier strike group is heading to the region. The officials said cyber attacks and information operations against the Iranian regime are also being considered. Trump is also asking for the help of an old frenemy, Elon Musk.
Are you going to send Starlink to Iran, sir, to help the people on the ground with the internet blackout for more than 72 hours?
We're going to be talking about that. We may get the internet going, if that's possible.
Are you talking to Musk?
We may speak to Elon, because as you know, he's very good at that kind of thing. He's got a very good company. So we may speak to Elon Musk. And in fact, I'm going to call him as soon as I'm finished with you.
So what's happening on the ground in Iran? It's hard to know for sure because Iranian authorities have shut down the country's internet for 4 days now. The protests have raged for over 2 weeks. Human rights groups estimate over 10,000 people have been arrested and over 500 are dead. Most are protesters. Dozens of security service members have also been killed. But some human rights groups estimate that thousands of protesters have been killed. Iran's economy is faltering. Their currency is collapsing while prices rise. Furthermore, Iran has been battered by both the Israeli and US military. Jank, this would be a major shift in the region. What do you think about certainly what's happening on the ground in Iran, but the idea that the United States is consulting with Benjamin Netanyahu to weigh its options?
Well, on that part, you know what I'm going to say. Of course they are. I mean, how else are they going to know what to do if they don't get directions from the Israeli prime minister? What, you expect American leaders to make decisions without asking the Israelis what their orders are? Of course not. So that, guys, unfortunately, this is another one of those situations where we're stuck in the middle with you, right? So here's what I mean by that. So on the one side, you have people that are saying the protesters are great and we should back them, and the mullahs are terrible and democracy is fantastic, and I agree with that. Okay, so that's great, and I would love for there to be democracy in Iran, and I would love for this to be an organic uprising. We'll come back to whether it is in a second, and you might be surprised at the answer, and for that to succeed. And then they replace it with voting that's legitimate, etc. God, that would be amazing. On the other hand, there's a whole group that doesn't care about that at all, doesn't want democracy in Iran. They want a puppet who's going to serve mainly Israel and maybe tangentially America, right? And so that puppet is likely to be the former Shah's son. And he's out there, and now that I've said that, he has his own cult, and they'll be attacking this video, this show, this network. There's like all sorts of political groups that just go around trying to attack all of their enemies and insisting that only their propaganda be put out there, right? So my guess is that out here in the West, there are a lot of Persians who mean well, who are not part of any propaganda outlet. They're not on Israel's side, America, whatever. They just want what's best for Iran, right? And they are varied in their opinions. And some of them like Shah Jr., right? And some of them really want the regime toppled. A lot of them would love to go back to, they have family in Iran. They'd like Iran to be free and all those things, right? And then there are the folks who are like, who don't care about Iran at all, and they only care about Israel. And they think, oh my God, regime change would be great. But here comes the caveat, Jordan. And you could tell it in Netanyahu's statements as well. They're not overly excited about this uprising. And that gives me way more faith that this uprising is organic and real. Because if it was fake, Netanyahu would be like, that's it, uprising, we gotta bomb now. And we gotta put these guys in charge. The minute we bomb, these guys gotta go in charge, right? Instead, he's like, this is an interesting uprising. It is good. Regime change, yes. Now, not related to them, but let's bomb the crap out of Iran and put our own puppet in. Huh, interesting. So you don't want to connect it to the protesters too much. You want to use the protesters as an excuse, but you don't want the protesters to actually win. Whereas I'm in the exact opposite camp, Jordan. I want the protesters to win, but I don't want to interfere, right? Because if you interfere and you bomb on behalf of the protesters, you're not going to help the protesters, you're going to hurt them, because people are going to want to rally around the flag, and they're going to view the protesters as, pro-Israeli or American or agitators, etc., and that doesn't help their cause at all inside Iran. So, and then one last thing is, but on the other hand, I'm okay with Starlink. Like if somehow they could turn the lights back on in terms of the internet on Iran, and that's not an invasion, that's not killing anyone, that's not dropping bombs, it's just enabling people on the ground, that I'm a lot more interested in. So what do you think, Jordan?
For me, it's too early to tell. Like I certainly want to see more. But through all of this, you have to look at, for me, you have to look at it through the lens of crippling US sanctions that Iran has been subjected to for years now. And it was exacerbated under COVID when they were still sanctioning Iran, which helped cripple their health infrastructure. So any unrest, any discontent that has been fomented, especially over the past few years, for me, I have to look at it through the lens of those sanctions. I don't know. I don't feel confident either way. Maybe it could be an organic backlash or uprising, totally within the realm of possibility. But I just don't feel confident without knowing more. And I certainly wouldn't want to weigh in without that confidence. But I know there is one person, Cenk, that is very excited about the potential of regime change in Iran, and that's Lindsey Graham.
Donald Trump says the best way to make Iran great again is for the protesters to win and the regime to come down. How do you do that? Whatever action we're going to take, Mr. President, needs to embolden the protesters and scare the hell out of the regime. If I were you, Mr. President, I would kill the leadership that are killing the people. You've got to end this. If it ends well, then peace breaks out. All the state sponsor of terrorism activity stops. Hezbollah, Hamas, they go away. Israel and Saudi make peace, a new day in the Mideast. If the Ayatollah hangs on, it's a giant Obama step backward. I have faith in you, Mr. President. I have trust in you. You are the Ronald Reagan plus of our time.
But Graham isn't the only senator who's cheering for US military intervention. Take a look.
The president saying he's now considering taking military action inside Iran. Do you want the US to get involved like that?
Sure, absolutely. And now if it continues to make more sense, absolutely. I think I was the only Democrat that fully supported our strike of their Iranian nuclear facilities last year. And now by then, without those kinds of strikes, Iran could have acquired a nuclear bomb.
Even former House Speaker Newt Gingrich is calling for strikes on Iran. Today, he wrote on X, "It is not enough to sympathize with the Iranian people in their struggle to get free from the dictatorship, which is clearly killing dissidents and fighting for its very survival. It is not enough to have government leaders publicly talking about support for the Iranian people, but failing to do anything real. In a few weeks, either the dictatorship will be gone or the Iranian people will have been defeated and suppressed, and a campaign to find the ringleaders and kill them will have begun. There is no middle ground. The goal of every Western leader should be to destroy the Iranian dictatorship at this moment of its vulnerability. The time to act is now." And Cenk, what you see here for me is the uniparty in Washington, the pro-regime change, the pro-military industrial complex uniparty that has a stranglehold on our system.
Yeah, so that part is crystal clear. When Fetterman and Lindsey Graham and Newt Gingrich come out, and Fetterman's theoretically a Democrat and the other two are Republicans, and say we must bomb Iran now, they speak for Israel. They're Israeli sock puppets, totally indisputable, completely owned by the government of Israel. And they've gotten millions of dollars in donations from the Israeli lobby, and God knows what else they have on them. So whenever Fetterman is speaking or Lindsey Graham is speaking, that's the government of Israel that's speaking. So in fact, Lindsey Graham got new orders in the last 5 days before he was saying about the memorandum of understanding. No, we need to have it forever. That's the money we give to Israel, etc. This is a story for later in the show, but Netanyahu has a new strategy on the memorandum of understanding, and Lindsey Graham comes out immediately, changes his position from a couple of days ago, and is now spouting the new Netanyahu position. So there's not an inch of difference between Lindsey Graham and Netanyahu or Fetterman and Netanyahu. They basically work for him. They're pretending to be American senators. So that means Israel wants us to bomb, but that's not unclear. That's why I say that part is obvious. Israel always wants America to fight its wars for it, Iraq, all the other global war on terror supposedly, and now the Iran war. But at the same time, we have what I view to be a relatively organic regime change. Some of you guys agree about that. Some of you disagree. I'll read a couple of those comments in a sec. And so you have to separate out those two things. That's why I think that if you really do want an uprising against the Ayatollah, and you would love the idea of a democracy in the Middle East or Iran being free in any way, and you don't mean it as, oh yes, and of course controlled like a dog by Israel and walked around on a leash and humiliated daily, and you're a real person who cares about Iran, I don't think this is unclear either way, because you still wouldn't want bombings. Because the minute you drop a bomb and you start killing Iranian civilians, the Iranians are going to hate whoever's dropping the bombs. So if it looks like the protesters are on the side of the people dropping the bombs, they will lose credibility and not have a chance of winning. But again, Israel doesn't mind that at all, because their ideal situation is use the protests as an excuse to bomb Iran, then they lose credibility. Wonderful, we didn't want them anyway. It looks like they might be real Iranians, and we don't want that. Then we go, oh, let's bring in this Shah, a former king, because that's the way to go. And that's their tell, guys. They go, oh, well, you don't want democracy in Iran, you don't want Iran to be free. Oh, you like the Ayatollah, right? Typical neocon stuff, right? And then you go, no, I would love democracy. In fact, I think that if the protesters win, there should be an election right after. No way, we're gonna bring in the former king's son, okay? We're gonna get a new king and he's gonna work for Israel. I mean, yeah, sure, democracy, maybe 10 or 20 years later after our puppet runs the place and bleeds it dry, right? So no, bombing is a hell no. American intervention is a hell no, because if you love that uprising, bombing would only make it less likely to succeed. And unless you're a dog for Israel, which is 90% of Washington, no one wants a puppet installed that then makes, again, humiliates the Iranian people on a daily basis and says you all have to work for Israel now, you all have to shut up and hate the Palestinians, and you declare yourselves terrorists, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the way that they've humiliated the people of UAE, Jordan, Egypt, et cetera, and their leaders totally work for Israel. If that happens to Iran, we're gonna have bigger blowback later. Oh yeah, that'll never happen. Like the last time we installed a Shah in Iran, and the blowback was what? Oh right, the Islamic Revolution, and that's how we got the Ayatollah. And Israel's new idea is let's bring the Shah's son back, so we could do that on steroids. No, you don't want that. That part is easy. Under no circumstances should we do an intervention, a military intervention in Iran. But what Israel wants, Israel gets, Jordan, as you know. So all of Washington, the Uniparty, et cetera, says war. So Trump there is being a tiny bit more honest than he was the first time around. Last time he was like, oh, I am the peace president. I can't wait to win an award from a soccer organization for being the peace president. So while I'm in the middle of peace negotiations, which are fake, and I never intended to work in the first place, I will use that as an excuse to bomb Iran exactly as Israel has ordered me to do. So this time around, he's saying, well, we could do peace, we could do negotiations, but we'll probably bomb them before that, because Bibi called me and he says he's gonna release the tapes, okay? Or whatever the hell he said, I don't know. But Jordan, I mean, we live in an Alice in Wonderland situation where we bother to show you American politicians when they're not in control at all. The only tape we should run is of Netanyahu, and then we'll have our answer as to what's gonna actually happen.
Yeah, in no way. It's ludicrous when you take a second to think about it, that during this volatile moment in Iran and where you have precarious peace talks happening, purportedly, you have people screaming about bombing this country. In what way does that help? It's just their solution for everything. Lindsey Graham has never seen a country that he doesn't want to bomb. I mean, the guy is
Israel.
the most bloodthirsty war hawk in Congress. And of course, he's wanted this specifically for years. So of course, that's gonna be his answer and his solution in what is a very delicate moment. In no way does this help, but it just shows how warped their minds are, that this is seen as a reasonable option among a menu of options. Just absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I just was saying caveat, of course, there is one country that Lindsey Graham would be against bombing, and that's Israel, right? Under no circumstances. You could convince him to bomb South Carolina way quicker than you convince them to bomb Israel. So anyways, we shouldn't bomb Israel, we shouldn't bomb South Carolina or any of these countries, which leads me to my final point. And you guys, look, a bunch of you wrote in. To be fair to you, I should give you the hearing that I was alluding to. YouTube member Oma315 said, as an Iranian American, things inside Iran are unreal massacre. That's why they need to cut the internet, cell phone, and landlines. So that is definitely true. What we should do about it is a different question. Timmy D's on Super Chat has a different point of view. Says Western media won't talk about the women, children, and hundreds of police officers killed by the violent rioters or the millions of Iranians that have come out in support of the state, and they say CIA, CIA, CIA. Look, I don't know about that either, but I will say this: in any situation, there's always two sides. their domestic affairs of any country. So when people say, well, the entire Iranian people are on the side of the protesters, I wish that were true. My guess is that's not entirely right, that there is a significant fundamentalist electorate in Iran as well. Even they're suffering under inflation, et cetera, and not all of them agree with the regime, but some of them do. So it does get more complicated than that, and that's why the minute you drop the first bomb, the guys who are in favor of the regime get emboldened. They go, see, we told you. Democracy's a bad idea, and all these protesters are CIA and Mossad. We have to protect beloved Iran, and you empower them the minute the first bomb lands. But instead, we get garbage in our media about how, like in Iraq, we were promised that we will be greeted as liberators. That definitely will not happen. That's a talking point of neocons, pure propaganda to get you into a war, none of which, of course, that they will fight. And that gets to the main point that all of you have been making, and which I'll read during the social break, of saying, yeah, how about here? How about here in America? Just talked to a bunch of people when I was out and about in Vegas, real people, and they're saying, look, man, we can't pay the bills. This is not like other times. We cannot pay the frickin' bills, and they couldn't care less about Iran. And honestly, even in a good way, like, oh, we'd like to help democracy in Iran, I guess, right? But I don't have time for that because I can't pay the rent, let alone killing fishermen off the coast of Venezuela and doing all this nonsense stuff. But as soon as the president gets into office, both Biden and Trump, all of your concerns gone, out the window. And the only debate they're having is which country to attack, which country to invade, and usually on behalf of a different government. All right, we gotta go. When we come back, unfortunately, this hits home here in LA. Somebody with a U-Haul truck running through a crowd. That story is also nuanced and interesting though. So come right back and we'll tell you about it. All right, let's go to Super Chat first. Mohit writes in, conservatives on Twitter are saying, where are all the Free Palestine movement people, all the celebrities rooting for the Iranian citizens to free Iran? Your response. So number one, that's Israeli propaganda. I'm not saying that conservatives aren't saying that. Some probably genuinely believe it after hearing the propaganda, and some are just bots and trolls pushing the propaganda forward. Why do I say it's propaganda? Guys, why are both left-wing and right-wing people very animated about what Israel's doing, the genocide, et cetera? Because they're using our money to do it. So, and there's an easy way to stop it. You just say, hey, I'm not going to give you money anymore if you commit a genocide. In the case of Iran, we have no such leverage. They don't report to us, they don't take money from us. We're not enabling what they're doing, okay? We're against it, right? But we're not helping Iran in any way, we're opposed to them. So it's totally apples and oranges. It's Israeli misdirection. Oh yeah, fine, we're committing a genocide with your money. But there was a guy who did a jaywalking in Malaysia. How come nobody's talking about the jaywalkers in Malaysia? Oh, you guys are all anti-Semites, right? No, it's BS, total utter BS. Why would people go out and say, just giant protests here in America? We want the Iranian government to do something but we don't control the Iranian government. You do a protest against your own government because you think you might be able to push it in a certain direction, like don't go to war. That's a logical protest of our government, right? Should we do a protest of the Kazakhstan government? I'm sure they're doing something wrong. So like, No, it's nonsense, utter nonsense. And besides which, look at my position. I'm in favor of the protests. I want an uprising against the Ayatollah. That doesn't mean, hence, we must bomb them. We must spend trillions of dollars, lose thousands of American service members, and then install a sock puppet leader for Israel. Those two things do not have to be connected. And I guarantee you, if you ask the people who are spreading that propaganda, they'll say, oh yeah, you gotta put the Shah in. You gotta put the Shah in. You gotta follow whatever Israel does. Okay, that's what they're about. So just separate them out, tune them out. They're literally paid to deceive you. P. Pikachu says, woo, it's turkey time. Guys, in the old days they used to have that ad, it's 4 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are today? So it's 6 p.m. Do you know where your internet is today? Get online, watch the Young Turks, 6 to 8 p.m. Spread the word every day, Monday through Friday. I like that it's turkey time. All right, we go to our YouTube members. OG Burning says, Bibi needs to get rid of Iran. That's their last big obstacle to their greater Israel project. And yes, guys, when Iran cannot defend Palestinians or anyone else, and no one else is interested in defending them, it's not. What'll happen next is that it's not that Israel necessarily takes over Iran, but they do with a puppet leader. But it also allows them to take the West Bank and Gaza Strip with no opposition at all. That's why they want to topple the Iranian regime to take more land. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Jordan with you guys, and CDN Norse Dog Dad, thanks for gifting your memberships on YouTube. Now, gift back to you guys. So now everybody's asking me about it. My friends are starting to switch because everybody that hears it are like, really? God, that's awesome deal. So Noble Mobile is a cell phone carrier like Verizon and AT&T, except they charge way less. They never charge, like the max you could pay is $50 a month. So I know a friend who pays $133 a month. Why? Just switch over to Noble Mobile. You do it through tyt.com/switch, but you never actually pay the $50. You get cash back for data that you don't use. So I've gotten $11 back, $17 back. So I'm paying in the 30s when my friend is paying $130. I'm saving $100 more. And right now, new deal, first month is only $10. So tyt.com/switch. Nothing on your phone changes. And it takes about 5 minutes. tyt.com/switch. All right, Jordan, what's next?
In addition to the ICE protests over the weekend, thousands of Angelenos also took to the streets in Los Angeles to march in support of the Iranian people. However, as you'll see in this disturbing video, things took a drastic turn after a man decided to drive a U-Haul through the crowd. Now, this is still a developing story, so we'll give you the details that we know right now. But before we get to that, Cenk, your 2 cents before we jump into this.
Yeah, this one's a little bit more complicated than I originally thought. He stumbles into that traffic, as you're about to see, and he kind of gets attacked first. So let's hear all the facts first, and then I want to come back and do analysis with Jordan on who was right and wrong here.
So as we touched on in the last segment, mass protests have erupted all across Iran in what some are calling the biggest challenge to the government in years. Over 500 protesters have been killed and over 10,000 have been arrested since those protests began. So why are we talking about the LA protest? The west side of Los Angeles, including the Westwood neighborhood, is home to the largest Iranian community outside Iran. And the relationship between the United States and Iran is a fraught issue there. Of an estimated 400,000 Iranian-born immigrants living in the United States, more than a third live in the Los Angeles region. They were exercising their First Amendment rights in what was originally a peaceful demonstration with people holding Iranian flags and banners saying justice for Iran. But chaos erupted when a man who's yet to be publicly identified drove a U-Haul covered in several banners discouraging U.S. involvement in Iran, drove through the crowd. The Los Angeles Fire Department said 2 people were evaluated at the scene and declined treatment. Police said 1 adult was confirmed struck by the vehicle but did not sustain significant injuries, and no ambulances were called to the scene. The driver of the truck, however, was injured in the chaos following the incident, according to LA Police Captain Richard Gabaldon. The U-Haul truck, with a window and side mirrors shattered, was stopped several blocks away and surrounded by police cars. Helicopter footage from the Los Angeles news outlet KABC showed officers keeping the crowd at bay as demonstrators swarmed the truck, throwing punches at the driver and thrusting flagpoles through the driver's side window. No protesters were arrested as of Sunday evening, but the driver does remain in police custody and could face charges of assault with a deadly weapon. The suspect has no arrest record. Officials do not believe that the incident was politically motivated or an act of terrorism, but stemmed from an altercation in the crowd, Captain Gabaldon said. Another video filmed before the ones we showed you does seem to corroborate that. Demonstrators ripped down banners and hit the vehicle. Let's take a look at some of those banners. This one reads, "No Shah, no regime. USA, do not repeat 1953, no mullah." This is a reference to the US-backed coup that toppled former Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh in August 1953. The August 1953 coup stemmed from US fears over the Soviet Union increasingly wanting a piece of Iran as communists agitated within the country. The ground had been laid partially by the British, who wanted to wrest back access to the Iranian oil industry, which had been nationalized earlier by Mossadegh. The coup toppled him and cemented the power of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. It lit the fuse for the 1979 Islamic Revolution, which saw the fatally ill Shah flee Iran and Ayatollah Khomeini usher in the theocracy that still governs the country. Again, officials are still investigating to determine the motive of the driver. But Cenk, I'm with you. After seeing that second video, I don't know if there was one.
Yeah, so it was painted in the press initially as like crazed supporter of the Ayatollah, rams over innocent protesters, against the Iranian regime, and it makes you think of all those terrorist attacks where the truck drives through the crowd on Christmas, etc. But then you see the video and the circumstance, and you listen to the LA cops, and you get a little different story. And so here's some context you might not know either. I don't know who was in that protest crowd. And there's a lot of good folks in that crowd, and they're sick of the Ayatollah, and they want Iran to be free. There's also some folks in that crowd who care more about Israel than they do about Iran. And so they're like, yeah, start a war, start a war. And that pro-Israeli crowd tends to be, well, historically lately, in the last couple of years, has been the most violent people in LA, right, when it comes to protests, and the most unaccountable. So in UCLA, there was, they talk about violence on campus and anti-Semitism, and there is some real anti-Semitism on college campuses. But a lot of times what happens is what happened in UCLA, where pro-Israel crowd came in and tried to beat up the peace protesters. There was almost no accountability for that. So they're kind of encouraged, don't worry about it, do any violence you want, you're above the law. And so here, you have a crowd that immediately starts doing violence against the truck. And wait a minute, we were like, it was kind of framed as like this guy who's in favor of the Ayatollah, maybe terrorist, Muslim, blah, blah, blah. The sign said no mullah. It didn't say yay mullah, pro mullah. It said no mullah. So then once you see the real story, you go, oh, a little bit different. I don't know why he took that turn. I don't know if it was an accident or not. With those signs, not the place you want to be. But just because you disagree with protesters on the other side doesn't mean they should attack your truck and smash your stuff and put you in danger. And by the way, I'm not excusing him, going forward. If he went forward in a way that is illegal and hit someone and endangered them, then he should be held accountable for that too. But it's certainly not a clear-cut case as it appeared initially in the news.
Yeah, that's my take as well. We have seen, sadly, attacks on protests or on parades or marches before. Typically, they do not sit idle. They don't sit there as people surround their vehicle. I mean, if they want to cause harm, they drive in at a higher rate of speed. We don't know how or why he was in that spot, but for whatever reason he was, and he was sitting there stationary as they surrounded his car or surrounded the U-Haul, were pulling down the signs and eventually busted the window. Now, if we want to be generous here, let's actually think about what that guy was thinking about as he was being surrounded by people who are mad at him and smashing the windows. Like, you don't know what's gonna happen. He probably just tried to get out of that situation. And it seemed like even in the other video, he was trying to get through slowly at first, and it was a little herky-jerky as he tried to go through what was a narrow path. Thankfully, but also you look at the injuries, Cenk. The only two people that the U-Haul did bump against, ultimately it seems, declined medical treatment. If he wanted to cause harm with a U-Haul in a crowd of that size, it seems like he would have. I think I'm with you. It's much more nuanced than it was originally reported. And I also think it's unhelpful to go fly out of the gate. Oh yeah, truck just ran through a protest, because everyone's first thought, understandably and tragically, because we've seen it before, is, oh, this person tried to cause harm. It seems unlikely at this point.
Yeah, last two things is, look guys, one thing seems clear. To Jordan's point, if he wanted to harm a lot of people, he'd drive really fast through that crowd. And he didn't. He didn't drive fast coming in. He didn't drive fast in the middle or at the end, right? Now, he might have panicked, but that leads to point number two. Under no circumstances should you drive through a crowd like that. Whatever, I know, even if you're scared. By the way, this is the same principle that I would give to the cop in Minnesota, the ICE guy in Minnesota, as I would to the person in all circumstances, right? So do not try to drive your way through a crowd or through people, right? But at the same time, when you're in that situation, don't also unnecessarily overreact and cause it. So like, I know it's super hard, but what I'm trying to get everybody to do is, I love protests. It's the most American thing you could do, okay? But you've got to turn the temperature down when it gets to physical confrontations, okay? Including with cars, trucks, etc. Don't create a situation where somebody's gonna get hurt on both sides. But probably the most important point of this story is, be careful what you see and read, because half the time it's true and half the time it's propaganda. So this scenario wound up being useful to the people who want to start war. So they framed it as, oh, terrible Muslim guy goes in with rams through a crowd with a truck, let's go invade Iran. And that's not what happened. Okay, let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we've got, speaking of smear campaigns, so one against Renee Nicole Good, the woman in Minnesota. And we're gonna talk about, is ICE popular or unpopular these days? That's an important development, and a lot more. Come right back. All right, let me start with Twitch this time. Nader NYC says Bezos box. We appreciate that. Look, if you're on, if you have Amazon Prime, just jump over and do this for 30 seconds, guys. It helps us a lot and it costs you nothing. TYT.com/prime, TYT.com/prime. You can get a free membership on Twitch. We get the money anyway. It doesn't cost you anything. TYT.com/prime. Itchy Brother Dragon says, we're under attack in Minneapolis. ICE is going door to door, setting off fire alarms and grabbing US citizens. ICE is already sexually assaulting kidnapped women. They're already stating they're not responsible for protecting these women. We are holding strong. Please post as many reports as you can, dear TYT. We will, and yeah, once you have people who are told go nuts and don't reveal who you are, of course you're gonna get terrible results. You're enabling and empowering people to do bad things while pretending to work for the government. They're going to agitate, try to get a reaction so they can bring in more shock troops and really try to put government tyranny in place. And for the folks who were against government tyranny, some of them supporting this is deeply ironic. Let's go to YouTube members saying, Adam Christmas saying, New Year's saying me still watching TYT, love being a member of this great channel and community. That's awesome, Adam, we love having you. M33324 says, coffee and dessert for dinner. Totally stressed and anxious over ICE and Iran. Thank goodness for TYT. Thanks for saying that. We'll certainly bring you the most accurate news we can on it. And I'll let you know when to panic. We're not there yet, but sometimes we are. In Minneapolis, I get it, guys. So keep everything civil. Do not give them an excuse to commit violence against you or to commit violence in a larger way. But protests are the most American thing you could do. Solid Mirage Crusader says, hi, Cenk and Jordan, do you think we are a literal inch away and not turning back from the start of World War III, clearly started by Israel and the US government? And do you think Russia and China will defend Iran? I don't think Russia and China will defend Iran, certainly not in the beginning, maybe later, depending on how disastrous the war goes. But yes, overall, you are right, we're flirting with disaster. We took a Russian oil tanker the other day. It was originally Venezuelan, they switched to Russian, and we took it. It's a very, very dangerous thing to do. We should not have done that, and I'm worried the next time that's gonna happen. Shut Up Tiffany says, we're worried about our own country. We hope they win, but it isn't our business when our protesters are dying. That's a good point. Yeah, Michael Rosamila writes in, even the most clear as day scenario where American intervention is morally right, I wouldn't want this administration doing anything because their incompetence is a liability. Another terrific point. Then Eddie Jameson wrote in, switched to Noble Mobile the other day. The hook that got me in was the interest earned on money returned from the unused data, 5.5% with annual increases. It's a high yield savings account on steroids. You know, Eddie, I forgot to tell people about that. That is true. That is that's like 10 times bigger than what you can get at the bank. So that's another good reason. TYT.com/switch. I think they're giving you too much money, okay? We'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Jordan with you guys. Also, Solo Rick, thanks for joining. We really appreciate it. Everybody who hits that join button below, you become part of our community and our nation, and you allow us to do this show, and the community supports one another, and I love that. So come join when you can. TYT.com/join is another great way of joining. And if you just want to help for free, ring the bell. That also helps and doesn't cost you anything. Jordan, what else?
Take a look at this.
At first, you heard Democrats, including the mayor of Minneapolis, saying that the car never struck the officer and the lethal force was unjustified. Now, of course, there is plentiful video evidence to show that the officer was struck by the car, that this deranged lunatic woman was trying to ram him over with her vehicle and was using that vehicle as a weapon, which justifies domestic terrorism.
I don't believe the cop was justified in shooting her 3 times in the face.
The Trump administration is continuing its smear campaign against Renee Nicole Good, the Minnesota woman who was murdered by Jonathan Ross, the ICE agent. And even some conservative commentators aren't having it. That was Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt talking to Fox News this morning. And over the weekend, top administration officials made the rounds in the press to double down on their character assassination of Miss Good. And we'll show you some more of what the Trump administration had to say. We'll get into some of the critics like who you just saw there, Tim Dillon. But first, Jank, I want to bring you in here. What do you make of this ongoing character assassination and smear campaign against Renee Good?
Yeah, it's a Rorschach test, but it's also a litmus test. Here's what I mean by that. Some in the country that love mass deportations look at that and go, oh my God, that poor officer was almost murdered by a terrorist. Oh, thank God he barely saved his life and shot her in the face 3 times. And others look at it and go, are you crazy? All he had to do was step aside. Actually, he did step aside, and then he shot her twice again in the face from the side. No, he's just not a domestic terrorist, you lunatics, right? And no, his life was not in danger. So that's your Rorschach test. But the more interesting one, Jordan, is the litmus test. Which side are people gonna go on here? And the one I was most curious about is independent voters and independent podcasters. And that jury has started to come in. So you saw one piece of the jury with Tim Dillon. His comments were a little bit more nuanced than that. We've got more. Let's look at all the facts first, and then we'll come back and talk about which way our independents gonna go on this, because that will be critical to which way the country's gonna go.
Yep. Well, let's start with Kristi Noem, who tried to push the administration's narrative on CNN this weekend.
So if this agents were perfectly fine, if everything he did was accurate, does that mean that other ICE agents should look at what?
He wasn't perfectly fine. He was injured. He went to the hospital.
No, his actions were fine. I didn't say.
In fact, I think a lot of people and guests, and even you yourself, called this situation something very different and untruthful about what it was. As far as
what did I say that was untruthful?
That this was not a correct definition of what was happening on the ground.
I said that your description. They were attempting to push out their vehicle and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle is not what we see on the videotape, and it's not.
It absolutely is the facts of what happened on the ground that day.
Never mind that the video showed she tried to wave them through, or that her last words were, "That's fine, dude, I'm not mad at you." They are demanding that you reject what you see on video and accept the ludicrous notion that Renee Good was a domestic terrorist. Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, was asked on Meet the Press about the administration's domestic terrorist label.
Is anyone who protests ICE a domestic terrorist in the eyes of the administration?
I can't say that. It's a case-by-case basis, but if you look up the definition of terrorism, is there violence? Is there threat of violence based on an ideology that wants to change the way the government does what we do? Look up the definition of terrorism.
But was Secretary Noem correct to label her a domestic terrorist, Mr. Homan?
Look, we don't know what, I don't know what Secretary Noem knows and what I know. I can tell you is what they did is illegal. And if you look up this definition of terrorism, it certainly could fall within that definition if you look at the definition of terrorism.
But you don't have evidence.
Pardon me?
You don't have evidence that she's a domestic terrorist.
I don't know what secretary has that I don't. I'm not going to judge what the secretary says, but if you look up the definition of terrorism, it certainly can fall within that.
So they've made their position clear, but are people buying it? Conservative comedian Tim Dillon rejected it on his show.
These are not well-trained law enforcement people in ICE right now. We're taking people that did backyard wrestling. I mean, the people that are in ICE right now are, this is your cousin who was in backyard wrestling. This is tough. This is not the cream of the crop. Do you know the guys that kidnapped Maduro, like Delta Force, Navy SEALs? This is not them. This is not the Delta Force, Navy SEAL people. This is people that this is people in their 3rd grade report card the teacher wrote that has violent tendencies.
And Senator Mark Warner went on CNBC to highlight how the training period for immigration agents was slashed. And wait until you hear about the ludicrous rationale.
ICE used to take 5 to 6 months to get trained. They've now lowered the training period to 47 days. Why 47 days? Because Donald Trump's the 47th president. Tell me that's a rational approach.
I'm not, obviously I'm not going to take that bait and say it's a rational approach, but
It's a fact, Joe. You can't pick your facts.
And that is embarrassingly true. According to The Atlantic, new deportation officers at ICE used to receive about 5 months of federal law enforcement training. Administration officials have cut that time roughly in half, partly by eliminating Spanish language courses. Academy training was shortened to 47 days, 3 officials told me. The number picked because Trump is the 47th president. DHS officials said the training will run 6 days a week for 8 weeks. But what about the general public? How do they feel about the administration's handling of this tragic killing? Over the weekend, there were over 1,000 protests nationwide under the banner of ICE Out for Good, but the administration shows no sign of slowing. Last week, over 2,000 more federal agents were sent to Minneapolis to conduct what ICE calls the largest immigration operation ever. Cenk?
Yeah, so the reason I say Tim Dillon's comments were a little bit more nuanced is because he also said, like, don't block ICE, don't, he doesn't love the protests, is the sense I got from that segment. And I'm halfway with him. I like the protests. Protests are American, protesting the way that ICE is conducting this, let alone the mass deportations themselves, is perfectly good thing to do. I do agree, like, just be super careful. Don't do anything physical, don't do anything anywhere near physical, because all they're gonna do is to discredit all the protests and all the legitimate points you wanna make, let alone the fact that people are gonna get hurt, and most especially the protesters, right? So, but overall, Dillon is going in the right direction again. So this time around, again opposing Trump. And so the idea that these podcasters who said, yeah, I guess Trump over Kamala Harris, or some part of a Trump cult and they'll never break and they'll always agree with Trump, that idea is dead now, totally dead. They've broken with Trump dozens of times already, and here he is doing it again. But the thing that I like the most, and this curious guy to quote on it, I'm not saying that I agree with anything else this guy says, but I also saw Dan Bilzerian, right, who is like a right-wing, tough guy kind of guy with problematic points of view, etc. We agree on Israel, but he takes other things way too far. But for a guy like him to say, yeah, it's not that manly to shoot a woman in the face 3 times, I was like, oh, that's a relief. Like there's now a kind of a surge back, Jordan, that I wasn't sure was gonna happen. And like I said, I'm a little relieved to see it partly happening, with people going, yeah, I don't think that this is the win that people think it is. Like, because there's a lot of guys going, yeah, it's a tough thing. Yeah, way to be, you see an unarmed woman, you shoot her in the head 3 times. That's the, wait, is that the manly thing? I don't think that is the manly thing, right? So I'm definitely encouraged by that. And it seems like Trump is losing the crowd in a big way, and including in the polling on immigration, which he had it. On immigration, he had great polling, and now he has bad polling because, as always, he takes it way too far.
Yeah, I hope in my heart that a majority of people can see that video for what it is. Some of the vocal minority on the right, ultimately, the fringe right, has an outsized voice relative to their share of people that have those same views. I try to always remind myself of that. Unfortunately, they also have outsized influence because the administration aligns themselves with that worldview. But what I really hope is that a majority of people in this country see this for what it is. It is a cold-blooded murder. Like you said earlier in this segment, he was on the side of the car. You can see the video that he was recording with his cell phone. First of all, what are you doing? Why are you recording with your cell phone? But he was, and he approaches her window at first. And she said, that's fine, dude, I'm not mad at you. And I see that, and then you try to tell me that that person is a terrorist, immediate non-starter. No, she's clearly not. She's trying to wave them through, and then it's like, oh, it's all good, don't worry about it. the quintessential Midwest nice. That it was one of the many things that makes this country great, and especially that region. He then goes to the other side of the car, where her wife is, going back and forth with him. She's talking to him. She's calling him out. She's emasculating him ultimately. She said, "Go have a sandwich, big boy," mocking him. "We'll be back later," showing she's not afraid. And it's in that moment, Jank, that he switches his phone from his right hand to his left before he's even back in front of the car. To me, that interaction with her wife and him switching hands with his phone, just because his gun's on his right side, that to me shows he knew what he was going to do before he even did it. And then when he pulled his gun out, she starts to turn and get out of there. And that's when he kills her. I would hope that every American can see that. Most Americans, let's be real, there's going to be some who refuse to accept reality out of blind partisanship. But let's hope that a majority of people see this for what it is. And then they see this administration attacking a dead woman, insulting her, labeling her a terrorist, maligning her, conducting a multi-day smear campaign on national television because she tried to get away from a masked stranger with a gun. It's disgusting. I don't know how we come back from this as a country if the acceptance of reality is not a majority viewpoint. So I hope in my heart that more people recognize this for what it is.
Yeah, so 2 great points by our members on TYT.com, and I love that you guys are part of the show. You could join it through TYT.com/join and get your comments read like this, because you guys are making great points. Asimo's Prophet asked a question: can Renee's family sue these people for defamation? The answer is yes, and it'll be a really interesting, complicated legal case, because she was not a public figure before she was shot. She's a public figure after she's shot, so it'll probably be a lower standard. It'll be really interesting to see, but it might cost, unfortunately, us a lot of money, because then they're gonna have to sue the government, and the government is the taxpayers. But that's why our politicians and our representatives should be a lot more careful, but they won't be. But Engineer with a brilliant point that backs up what Tim Dillon is saying and what Jordan said about the competence. Engineer said, the agent shot into the car while his fellow agent had his hands on the driver's window. I'm not sure that any legitimate training would not allow putting fellow officers in the line of fire. Absolutely right. And honestly, I hadn't thought of that. That's why I love it when you guys send in these great comments. TYT.com/join to become a member and help us do the show. Yeah, you're absolutely right. First of all, he's not supposed to have a cell phone because he's supposed to have his hands free in case he's in danger. That was already problematic. The switching of the hands that Jordan mentioned is against protocol, because you shouldn't have the cell phone in your hand in the first place, let alone what it indicates about what he was about to do. And lastly, if you're shooting at through the car, which he was, and the first shot was from the front, your fellow ICE officer's right there, right next to her, holding onto the door. That is definitely not proper training, not even close. And then you see Kristi Noem on air going, what he did was perfect, it was totally fine. Oh, come on. That can't possibly be true. Even if you're on as right-wing as it possibly gets, why would you want to endanger a fellow officer like that? So brilliant point. Finally, for me, look, I always show another foot, right? So Tom Homan's definition of terrorist, if you look it up, he says it could be violence or perceived threats of violence. There goes everything, right? And saying, and it includes a political philosophy, and it wants the government to change something that it's doing. Well, first of all, every protest has a political philosophy and wants the government to change what it's doing. That's why it's a protest, right? In fact, there's a protest on a date of, I think it was January 5th, 12th, no, 6th, January 6th, where they had a political philosophy. They wanted the government very much to change something that it was doing. And there wasn't just threats of violence, there was significant violence. Now, if you call January 6th guys domestic terrorists, what will be the right-wing reaction? How dare you, right? Okay, fine, no problem. I don't want to call them domestic terrorists either. I think that is a dangerous road to go on in either direction, okay? For either side to start calling fellow citizens terrorists, okay? But they were not domestic terrorists, and Renee Gold going 2 miles per hour, swerving away from the officer, was a domestic terrorist? No, that means you're not being genuine at all. I'm referring to Tom Homan. You're just doing propaganda. So there's your answer.
Yeah, I mean, even I've seen a lot of people draw comparisons to how they reacted to Ashley Babbitt being shot in the Capitol. She tried to squeeze through the window to go in further, ignoring Capitol Police's orders. They see her as a martyr. They see everyone who was arrested on January 6th as a political victim. Political prisoners was the term that they used. And then they got pardons. And then you're saying that this woman who was trying to get out of there, clearly forensic analysis by New York Times and others shows the wheels are going the other way. She's got plushies in the car, her dog's in the car. If you are a terrorist, you're not bringing your dog. You're not bringing your family lab. Like what? It is insulting to the intelligence of every American that they are trying to convince people of this. It's grotesque. Just admit the guy was wrong. It is so easy, but their unwillingness to do that shows the cruelty here is the point, and the precedent that it sets has me very concerned. As you've seen from reporting by people like Nick Turks at The Intercept, Ken Klippenstein, they are trying to import the label they are using in Venezuela of terrorists, the justification and use case of the terrorist label there domestically under, I think it was MPSM 7, I might get the acronym wrong, but the memo that Ken and Nick Turks have reported on extensively shows to people who are super read in on national security and domestic issues like that, they're trying to import that same label and use it here. This is an example. I was talking to Ken that day and he said, this is exactly what that is. And by defending this agent shows they want this to be the label they use going forward. If you get in the way of the regime, if you get in the way of this administration, you are a terrorist. And if you are killed on the spot, so be it.
That's why the use of the word terrorist is super duper dangerous. Once Israel started calling the Muslims around them terrorists, they had carte blanche to kill them all. And they have killed an enormous amount of them. And they've gotten us to do a global war on terror where we killed hundreds of thousands of people across the world. Once you call someone a terrorist, you can do anything you want to them. The government can. That is why we cannot have the left wing or the right wing or any wing in this country being called terrorists. No, we're citizens of this country. And you use that kind of language, it is super dangerous and it will have blowback consequences for all of us. Super last thing, guys, is a question to you guys, because I'm curious how it's gonna go. The polling so far is Trump has lost popularity on immigration, ICE has lost popularity, but we have not gotten the polling in after the shooting, so we don't know yet. So we're asking on TYT.com, how do you think independents view the actions of ICE? A, they are in favor of strong force and mass deportations. B, they are uncomfortable with ICE's extreme actions. So that's on TYT.com. We're very curious about your opinion. Go take the poll. We'll report back on it. Jordan, thank you for this hour. We appreciate it, brother. And when we come back, we've got a lot more for you guys, including, unfortunately, more updates from Israel and some of what they are pushing us to do lately, and some of the polling as well on the Powell situation, where Trump is trying to arrest the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, which is of course insane. But we do have the polling on whether that's working. We'll be right back.
Damn it, they failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong, because you should be angry. Young Turks.
It was genuine. He was mad.
Cenk Uygur, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
Cenk the Turk Uygur.
What kind of TV station is this? The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It was right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power.
We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world.
We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
Television, we're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
And Phil and host beat CNN and headline news combined. At some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a tall glass of shut up juice.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him.
He says to me, "You won't believe the meeting that I just had."
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
And they want him off the air.
Cenk took an incredible risk.
We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I should be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it.
Magic. It's showtime. And say 45 minutes. I'm hosting today. Now I know what you're thinking, Jerry, your face is already perfect, but you know what? I still need to apply some makeup. I went through this process, right? A few years ago, when I realized that I was gonna have to wear makeup on the show. I had to go through like finding out what my undertones were. You guys know what those are? I got my MAC Cosmetics. It says SPF 15 foundation, broad spectrum. But apparently what I have is red undertones, and I think pores are not supposed to be seen. I need all these things to be confirmed for me. These sponge things don't work for me. You gotta use your hands. At least I do. That's how the magic really happens. So we're gonna go through a tutorial how to make the magic happen from beautiful to beautifuler. Let's go. I've already been moisturized. That's the first thing. But moisturization already happened. We go raw. All hands. Pick up a couple streaks. This is the guy we're putting on makeup. We got dots. There's some shiny points that generally happen. First of all, here we go. You dust here. I'm putting way too much, but you dust. Oh, get the excess off. You don't want chunky powder. There's like a T-zone, I think, right? Mine is a double T-zone. Because I went middle and another cross. Make sure your nose isn't all shiny. People get on you for it. You know, say, that's not a good point you made on there, JR. Your nose is shiny. You guys are picky like that sometimes. I think that's about it, fellas and ladies. See you guys next time. Bitsies.
I only heard the last word, Cenk, but.
Oh, I said, how you doing, Sharon?
I'm doing great. Good to be here with you. And I hope you're doing great too.
I'm hanging in there. All right, what's our next story then?
Fed up, Cenk. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says the Department of Justice has served warrants, if you will. Pull it up a little bit. Here we go again. Federal Reserve has been served with grand jury subpoenas threatening a criminal indictment, a move he calls unprecedented and politically motivated. Powell says the investigation is nominally about a multi-year renovation of historic Federal Reserve buildings and his testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June, but he flatly rejects that explanation. So, Cenk, what's your 2 cents on this federal prosecutors opening this criminal probe into a sitting federal chair?
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with the unaccountable nature of the Federal Reserve. This has nothing to do with that. This is trying to arrest the head of the Federal Reserve because he didn't lower interest rates in a way that a politician wanted to. That is mental. But also, Sharon, this is going to provide a clash between Trump and the business community. Who's going to win that clash? I have an answer. But let's get all the facts first.
Okay, some more facts for you. Powell released a rare video statement, Cenk, warning that the investigation has nothing to do with renovations or oversight, everything to do with political pressure over interest rates. Listen.
This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. It is not about Congress's oversight role. The Fed, through testimony and other public disclosures, made every effort to keep Congress informed about the renovation project. Those are pretexts. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do, with integrity and a commitment to serving the American people.
Chairman Powell there. Meantime, the president, Donald Trump, asked directly about the investigation. He told NBC News he, quote, didn't know anything about it, referring to the criminal probe before immediately attacking Powell, saying he's, quote, not very good at the Fed and not very good at building buildings. Trump also insisted the subpoenas had nothing to do with interest rates, saying, no, I wouldn't even think of doing it that way, while adding that Powell should field pressure because rates are far too high. That denial comes after months of Trump publicly threatening to fire Powell, of course, floating lawsuits over the Fed renovation project, which Trump claims could exceed $4 billion, and repeatedly damaging aggressive rate cuts. The political fallout has been immediate here. Republican Senator Tom Tillis says he will block any Trump nominee to replace Powell until the investigation is resolved. Democrats, including Senator Elizabeth Warren, say this is a direct assault on the independence of the Federal Reserve and a threat to economic stability. And then you have the polling. Polling analyst Harry Enton noted on X, Americans significantly disagree with Trump when it comes to the Fed. 68% want the Federal Reserve to act independently of Trump. He also noted that Americans consistently rank inflation, interest rates, economic stability as top concerns, while Trump's economic approval remains underwater nationally. So why do this, Cenk? I've heard a lot of commentators today and really throughout the weekend talk about how, why shoot yourself in the foot? This is unnecessary. This is a waste of political capital. Why do this?
Because Trump's a thug and an idiot. So let me explain, and so you make your own decision. So number one, does this potential arrest of the Federal Reserve Chair have anything to do with overruns on a construction project? Come on, don't embarrass yourself. Not one person thinks that. Like, oh my gosh, it's the first overruns we've seen in the government on any project. Let's go arrest someone right away. No, he keeps telling them to move the interest rates down and he won't. He threatened them in 1,000 different ways that didn't work. So now he's going to the nuclear option, which is threatening to arrest them. Like, I can't begin, if you're not familiar with how our system of government works, I can't begin to tell you how mental that is, okay? So now, my opinion and your opinion on it, if you're at home, should be relevant, but they're a lot less relevant than the people with power. So in this case, that's the business community. And the business community has overwhelming power. So they have more power than anything else. They're the ones that drive the uniparty. And they're the ones that Trump sometimes seems to be fighting against. That's how he gets his populist credentials, his anti-establishment credentials, because in this case, he is fighting the establishment. The only problem is, this is a super, super, super rare case where it's not that like Trump is some sort of brave populist hero who's doing it for the people, right? If he was, I'd at least excuse it for good intentions. It has nothing to do with that, guys. It's just two different sides of the establishment, Trump being one of them, trying to gain an advantage. So in this case, why does Trump want it? Because if interest rates are lower, it heats up the economy. If the economy is hotter, going into an election in 2026, the Republicans are more likely to retain the House. Hence, Trump is more likely to retain power and not be impeached. Because if the Democrats hold the House, he believes, rightly or wrongly, that he'll definitely be impeached again. So he's trying with all of his might, not on behalf of the American people. If you're a populist who has issues with the Federal Reserve, does this help address that? No, it doesn't change the structure of the Fed at all. So this is a fake fight. This is not about populism at all. This is me no like Jerome Powell, me want lower interest rates. But that also has a giant downside too, even no matter where you are on the political spectrum. If you lower the interest rates, you know what becomes more likely? Inflation. So Powell is trying to keep a balance where we have as good an economy as we can. Why? Because the business community wants a really strong economy, right? It's not like they want a weak economy. And so at the same time, they don't want inflation because they know inflation is a disaster for everyone involved, including the business community. But Trump doesn't think like that. Trump is short-term lizard brain. So he's like, me want hot economy good. Me want before elections. Me want Powell to lower rates. If Powell doesn't lower rates, me threaten him with civil lawsuit. Me threaten him with firing him. Oh, those didn't work. Me threaten with arresting him. We will put him in prison. That way I will be a good thug who is leader of this country. No. So this is stupid to the nth degree. I can't believe he's found a way to get me to agree with the Federal Reserve. I don't think he meant it, but somehow he twisted things around so much, it got to that point. No, this is nonsense. Sharon, what are we doing here? And by the way, his arrest of his political opponents before James Comey and Letitia James, spectacular flops. Like the judges were like, you didn't even bring in accredited lawyers. Bozo the Clown is representing you. And Ronald McDonald came out of retirement to try this case. So Jerome Powell isn't gonna get arrested, but even threatening it really undermines the kind of democracy we're trying to run here. So Sharon, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, if you're now aligned with the Federal Reserve on this occasion, the polling's against what Trump is doing, so the people aren't with him. The business community, as you said, is super strong. I'm not sure I even understand why Jerome Powell, except for personal reasons. I guess I get it, although he didn't want to make any statements when the other woman was under fire. I'm not sure why he even spoke to camera and gave this statement. We get it. So I don't even know if that statement's gonna help the confidence or whatever he was trying to do there. Do you?
Yeah, so the reason why he's saying like, oh, this doesn't have to do with interest rates is because if he says it has to do with interest rates, it's gonna get thrown out of court on day one. So they're just gonna read, oh, the president said that he was arrested for not moving interest rates, because Trump does that all the time. He accidentally admits things, so he must have been told 100 times over. Now remember, Mr. President, if we wanna arrest them, do not say it's about the interest rates, because the judge will then go, okay, this has nothing to do with the construction overcosts, this is a political maneuver, dismissed, right? So that's why he's trying to cover it. By the way-
But what about Powell? Why does he bother to talk about it?
Oh, because Powell is horrified. He's like, are you really going to arrest me? And what you have to understand, Sharon, is so many people in like the power circles are enormous cowards. And I get why. Why? Because we don't have that much to lose. It allows us to be braver. They have a lot to lose. So the minute they run into a guy like Trump, they run for the hills. So Powell wanted to be clear here No. I'm not going to do this mealy mouth BS. Oh, I don't know what it's about. Maybe it's about politics and maybe it's about the construction. No, he's like, it has nothing to do with the construction. It has everything to do with politics. And I love that he did that. I thought that was strong and I think it was the right message. And now to the question of who's going to win on this one. Already the polling indicates that American people think that it should be independent and not tied to a politician. Overwhelmingly, 68% wanted to be independent. Only 19% agree with Trump, so that's already a disaster. But on top of that, the Chamber of Commerce, corporations in this country are the most powerful force, not only in the country, but on planet Earth in the history of time. So yeah, from time to time, they have temporary losses to Donald Trump on tariffs. Very rarely losses to anyone on the Democratic side, right? But in this case, they're not gonna lose this one. The courts have been jam-packed, not with conservatives, but pro-business judges. So even when they go to the courts are gonna be like, you mess with the Chamber of Commerce? You serious? There's no way they're gonna throw this out immediately. And right now, already we have Republicans today, as we were going to air, going, I don't agree with Trump on this. I don't agree with Trump on this. Why? Because their donors are calling him and going, this will endanger the entire stock market. I don't care how much you have to kiss Trump's ass on any other issue, but you will not support him on this. And they're like, yes, sir, right away, sir. I'll be on CNBC right away, sir. And then they come on here. Well, I love Donald Trump, but this is the one area I think he's going too far, right? So you're gonna see a lot more of that because none of our politicians work for us. Chamber of Commerce will be sending them out in this rare case against Donald Trump. And you'll see it all over your airwaves, and this won't go anywhere because the Federal Reserve, Wall Street, and the business community in this country are way too powerful. And in this super rare case, they happen to be right.
Yeah, well, a fight for nothing. He won't win this one. Let's take a quick social break. We'll be right back with more.
Let's go to Super Chat. K-Shack writes in, do you believe claims coming from HRANA, that's human rights activists in Iran, a group that is reportedly funded by NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, which exists through US congressional grants? So I thought of that, and so the different groups are reporting that 200 protesters have been killed in Iran. Some are saying 500, some are saying 1,000, 2,000, etc. I ignore all of that. So why do I ignore them? Not because I don't care about the protesters, I know. I care a lot, but I'm positive it's a big number and it doesn't quite matter if it's 200 or 500. And I'm not interested in propaganda from anyone trying to inflate the number or deflate the number. The bottom line is, are the mullahs killing protesters in the streets? Yes, they are. That part is true. And have they shut down the internet and freedom, etc.? Yes, that is also true. All right, Solid Mirage Vanguard says, look, and by the way, brother, just real quick, last thing on that. The time you have to care about the propaganda is when they go, okay, a lot of human rights groups are reporting 200 dead, but we're reporting 2,000 dead, and that is why we should bomb Iran. Okay, no, I'm not interested in your opinion on bombing Iran. not interested, right? So they usually have a giveaway. In this case, I haven't seen it clearly enough. Solid Mirage Vanguard says, we've arrived in historic times. The US government has turned into white hooded supremacists. Those who once fought apartheid now reward the monsters of Israel playing victims while breaking every international human rights law. Well, I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. Israel does break all those laws. We do encourage them, we aid and abet them. In fact, we finance all of their law breaking. And yes, they're just as bad as apartheid South Africa. They've been enslaving 5.5 million Palestinians for 58 years, saying they deserve no freedom and they should not have human rights. So that's as disgusting a racist policy and dictatorial in their reign over the occupied territories as you could have. And us funding it even $1 is a moral stain on this country given to us by Israel first. Original Props writes in on YouTube member section, when Congress passed the Patriot Act, there was talk of what if they use it against its own citizens? Now with Trump deeming people that don't agree with his politics as terrorists, we're screwed. We are if it sticks, but I think a lot of people are gonna push back on it as we imagine, but you're right to sound that warning siren for sure. S Pluto Records says, yay, Sharon. Kancho Dongchim writes in, I'm a massage therapist and I've had to do more training than ICE. Hilarious. So that's also true. Guys, check out the MLK collection on shoptyt.com. MLK Day is coming up. Every time I wear one of the MLK shirts, I get a great compliment every time. So check it out, shoptyt.com. All right, back on TYT, the online news network. Cenk Uygur, Sharon Reed with you guys. Sharon, what's next?
Cenk, aid and abet.
I want to taper off the military aid within the next 10 years.
That would be a very dramatic shift.
We kept, as you say, American military support to the tune of $3.8 billion a year, much appreciated. So now in my visit with President Trump, I said, we very deeply appreciate the military aid that America has given us over the years, but here too we've come of age.
So that's an interview with The Economist, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did, where he made the shocking claim that American military aid to Israel should be tapered off to zero over the next decade. Is he being honest? If so, why would he want the aid to stop? Before we get into more of it, Cenk, your 2 cents here.
Yeah, this is a trick, so don't get fooled by it. They definitely want the aid. They're gonna ask us for an enormous sum of money, and then they're gonna pretend, oh, don't worry, 10 or 20 years later, we might ask for less. Wink. So we'll give you the facts on what they're doing here, and then I'll explain the rest of the trick and how, of course, we should give them this sum instead. Zero. We owe Israel absolutely nothing. Okay, but let's give you the facts on what they're doing on the ground.
Yeah, under the current US-Israel Memorandum of Understanding that expires in 2028, America gives Israel $3.8 billion in military aid every single year, not including the supplemental aid we've sent over the past several years. American aid makes up about 15% of Israel's defense budget. Show you how that looks. Since 1946, we've given Israel over $300 billion, adjust the numbers for inflation, in total economic and military assistance, more than any other country. But Netanyahu says it's finally time for Israel to stand on its own. Here's his reasoning.
We've come of age and we've developed incredible capacities. And in our economy, which will soon reach, certainly within a decade, it'll reach about $1 trillion. It's not a huge economy, but it's not a small economy. So I want to taper off the military aid within the next 10 years. That's not saying that I don't want to fight for the allegiance and support of the American people. I do. You have to be crazy not to. And it's something deep. It's not.
You want to taper it off to zero within 10 years?
Yes.
That would be a very dramatic shift.
Well, it's in the works.
He also suggested tapering aid could help improve public perception of Israel. I'd like to do everything I can to fight the propaganda war waged against us, the Prime Minister said. In the wake of those comments, Senator Lindsey Graham, arguably the biggest Israel defender in Congress, is saying that the termination of military aid should actually be expedited. Graham says, I will always appreciate allies who are trying to be more self-sufficient and believe that given what the Prime Minister said, we need not wait 10 years. The billions in taxpayer dollars that would be saved by expediting the termination of military aid to Israel will and should be plowed back into the US military, which is the best in the world and in great demand. Graham said he's been presenting a proposal, he will be rather, presenting a proposal to Trump soon. Except Graham said the polar opposite thing literally less than a week ago. In an interview with the Jerusalem Post, he argued this. Some in Israel, I think including Prime Minister Netanyahu, think these days that Israel should downgrade the next MOU when it comes to the dependence on the US. Big mistake. The day it is seen in Washington that you really don't need us is a big mistake. The people you're trying to please will never be pleased. So why the sudden change, some are asking? Well, it's also worth noting that other reporting suggests Israel has no intention of letting American aid go. Axios reported this back in November. You see it there. Israel seeks a 20-year military aid deal with the United States with America First tweaks. So Cenk, it's very schizophrenic. It's all over the place here. What gives? What's going on?
Yeah, so they changed talking points, that's why. And Lindsey Graham's a great example because he will literally say whatever the Israeli government orders him to say. So 5 days ago, they were ordering him to say, I appreciate that Israel doesn't want as much money because they're such wonderful humanitarians. But I think it is in the best interest of America to give them the maximum amount of money. And they're like, hey, Lindsey, we're changing the talking point. We're gonna pretend we're not gonna take as much. And so you go say, we're gonna taper it off and stuff. Meanwhile, we're gonna take the same amount. And then when that 10 years is up, we're gonna take even more, right? So, but here's a new talking point. Yeah, rough. Yeah, there you go. Now you just put it in your language. Dog, go out there. So the dog comes out and goes, we will taper off, of course. I mean, give everything to Israel, but we will taper off, and so it'll seem like it is less. Okay, so that's what's happening. Total, utter propaganda. Good news is Netanyahu's become like Trump. He just can't stop saying the things that are top of his mind, right? So before he's like, we are going to buy TikTok for Israel. But remember, we don't control the media. Oh, okay. Hey, we are going to order America to do this. And if you don't, you're all anti-Semites. But we don't control anything. Anyways, so now he said it. Sharon read the quote to you guys. This is so they could fight the propaganda war. He didn't say this is so that Israel could be better off in the long run as an independent country. He said, so we can fight the propaganda war. So it's just a change in talking point. There's no scenario under which Israeli leaders are not going to want to rob us. And if I say robbery, you say, boo-hoo, no, you can't say that. Well, we just showed you the chart. They've taken over $300 billion off of us. And if you say, well, no, that helped America. Great. You know what? I'd be happy to agree with you. So if it helps the country that gave it instead of received it, then great. Israel can give us $300 billion. That way, that'll help Israel tremendously. I mean, that's what the Israelis say, right? The ones that are giving the aid are better off. So Israel, why don't you give us a memorandum of understanding where we get our money back? Oh, no way, you anti-Semites, you owe me. You are disgusting anti-Semites for wanting your $300 billion back. Okay, so then it doesn't help the country giving the money. Okay, so are they going to ask for about, before? Look, there was a report that Sharon showed you from Axios. That was 20 billion, but not just 20 years, but not just 20 years. They're like, the 4 billion we're getting now, that's just not enough. We're going to need a lot more than that, right? And it's in the story. So I was assuming that they'd go for about 5 billion over 20 years. That's another $100 billion. And there's sticker shock involved with $100 billion. They're gonna get it anyway, they figure. So they're like, 20, we got a little greedy there. Okay, we're losing the propaganda war. We'll go back to 10 like we did. Why am I giving you a 10-year guarantee? No other country gets a 10-year guarantee. What if you elect Hitler in year 8? Or what if you already have a guy that acts a lot like him now? Why do I have to give you 10 years of guarantees when I don't even know what you're gonna do? Well, that's because if you don't, I'm gonna say you hate Jews and I'm gonna ruin your life. Oh, wow, that seems like a compelling point. So no, guys, memorandum of understanding should be $0. There is no such thing. It's an invention of Israel to take more money off of us. And by the way, the country that came in second there was Egypt, right? Oh, you say, wow, that's a Muslim Arab country, so it seems, no. Egypt made a peace deal with Israel. The only reason we give them money is so they will not attack Israel and they'll be good, loyal servants of Israel. So when you take Egypt and Israel put together, oh my God, it dwarfs every other country combined. And that's how much our politicians work for Israel and not us. So whatever our politicians say at the end is guaranteed to be maximum helpful to Israel and screw over the American people to the best of their abilities. So the only question is, what's the best marketing for it? If we call it 40 billion or 30 or 50 billion, can we shove it down the throat of the American people with the help of almost all of American media and all of the American politicians? Or have the people in America woken up enough that whether it's 40 billion or 100 billion, we're gonna go, no, brother, we don't owe you a goddamn thing. And you keep talking like this, and we should start a conversation about you paying us back.
Yeah, it seems that with more and more people starting to come around to that position, that the other way to win the propaganda war is to control more and more access or limit more and more access to journalists. And so that's where this comes into play.
Could you say definitively that you will allow the international press in without the IDF?
I didn't say without the IDF, but we can have more numbers than you can see. I mean, it's so small. You can't really, it's not like
I've been there with the IDF. No. It is small, but it is much, the more important thing is to allow the press in independently. And if you really want to change the perception of Gaza, then it is not. There's a ceasefire now.
Yeah, but it's still a war zone. We just had
It's hard for me not to think that you have something that you want to hide when you won't let the press in.
It's that last part where she pushed him. Benjamin Netanyahu had his feet held to the fire by The Economist's editor-in-chief, Zanny Minton Beddoes. She confronted him about Israel refusing to allow journalists access to Gaza without an IDF escort. Before we hear more excuses from Netanyahu, Cenk, give us your initial take here.
The Israeli government kills more journalists than all other regimes and terrorist groups in the world combined. There's a reason why they murder so many journalists, because they don't want to see the country and the world to see the horrors of what they have done in Gaza, which is an unmitigated, disgusting slaughterhouse and a complete genocide. And that is agreed by the entire world. But Netanyahu is desperate to keep out all journalists. And if there's Palestinian journalists, he'll just kill them, including American journalists like Shireen Abu Akleh. And he knows the American press and the American government will be his dogs, and they will say, oh no, Israel is the best democracy in the Middle East, as he murders journalist after journalist after journalist and does not let others in, because they are not a democracy. They're a dictatorship in Gaza and the West Bank, and they have been an absolutely brutal dictatorship, occupying in a deeply disgusting racist way another group of people and keeping them in open air camps. So we'll give you the facts on how many journalists they have murdered now, and understand, of course, that she's right. The only reason why they're not letting more independent journalists in is because then they'd have to kill them to make sure that the truth doesn't get out and only Israeli propaganda gets out. And that's what we've been living with our whole lives.
Yeah, the reporter is correct. As you said, journalists are still barred from going into Gaza to evaluate the situation independently, meaning without the presence of the IDF. And only a few foreign reporters have been allowed into the Strip while embedded with IDF troops. Netanyahu's government is fighting to keep it that way. The Times of Israel reported just a week ago that Israel's government has told the Supreme Court that a ban on international media access in Gaza should remain in place due to security risks in the enclave, according to a court submission. The deputy editor, Edward Carr, also pressed Netanyahu on allowing the press into Gaza. And while answering the question, Bibi admitted that journalists had been killed.
Why don't you allow international journalists into Gaza?
I think we do, but we could do more, and we probably should.
But not without being with the IDF.
Yeah, well, that's not an uncommon practice, but I can tell you one thing. First of all, we don't want any journalists killed, and some have been tragically killed because there's crossfire. It's dangerous. We just had this now, today. We had rocket fire. A few days ago, we had sniper fire. That's yesterday, actually. I wouldn't be so cavalier about it. And the last thing I want to see is any of you or anyone else.
There have been a huge number of journalists killed in Gaza. So I don't think it's very easy for you to say that you are not concerned about people's lives.
Well, of course I am, because we didn't target them. Zani, we didn't target them. We don't kill journalists, and we don't jail them either, and we certainly don't execute them, as Hamas is doing.
With a straight face.
Yeah. Sharon, can I just jump in on that?
Yeah.
That was a bold-faced lie. Israel executes journalists on a regular basis. So we're gonna give you the numbers in a second. I'm gonna let Sharon go, but Shireen Abu Akleh was shot and killed by a sniper. She's one of the most famous journalists in the Middle East. She was an American, and New York Times, CNN, American government, all had to acknowledge, yeah, that was an assassination. Israel murdered her. And by the way, our government asked for no consequences for an American journalist being murdered by the state of Israel, because we're not allowed to object to our overlords. They run us, so we can't say, hey, sorry, but like the Saudis, that's another ostensible ally of America, they murdered a journalist. He wasn't a US citizen, but he worked for the Washington Post, and what they did to him was horrific, Khashoggi. They killed him, assassinated him, dismembered him, etc. In this case, same exact thing. There's no dismemberment, but they shoot her in the neck and murder her, and everyone acknowledges that they murdered her, except no controversy, no outrage. The American government grovels to Israel and goes, oh, please murder more of our journalists. We're so sorry we ever brought it up. Has the murderer been arrested? Has America asked for the Israeli assassin who murdered an American journalist to be arrested? Absolutely not, because we're their client state. Even though we give them $300 billion, we work for them. And we're not allowed to criticize the beloved Israeli government. Our politicians are the most corrupt, disgusting people. They work for a foreign government. They never protect us. But it's not just that one American journalist. They've killed hundreds of journalists. And yes, from hundreds of yards away, usually a chest or a headshot, because they're assassins, they're terrorists, and they're definitely targeting the journalists on purpose. More numbers, Sharon.
So here's the reality, Cenk, of what's happened in Gaza since the war began. Nasser Abu Bakr, chairman of the Palestinian Journalist Syndicate, reported that more than 255 journalists were killed in Gaza, representing 18% of the overall number in the Strip. More than 500 wounded. Israel arrested over 200 others. He said they didn't arrest, who were subjected to extreme torture in prison. Additionally, relatives of journalists also were killed or targeted. Gaza has become the deadliest place for journalists ever. The Committee to Protect Journalists released a report last year. It found more journalists were killed in 2024 than in any other year in the past 3 decades. Nearly 70% were killed by Israel. 2024, the deadliest year. So I guess Netanyahu is correct when he says Gaza isn't a safe place for reporters. Cenk, he's just lying about who's carrying out the most violence against them. Do you think Israel will allow journalists to go into Gaza independently at any point? Will they be forced to?
Well, they're not forced to do anything. They're mighty Israel. They will force the world to do whatever they want. It will not go in other direction. Now, if you say, hey, Jake, that sounds hyperbolic, and golly gee, are you targeting poor, tiny little victim Israel in an unfair way? Well, let's see what's fair and unfair. I mean, look at that Committee to Protect Journalists number. They lapped the field. They killed more journalists than all other countries and terrorist organizations combined, and it wasn't close. Israel killed 70% of the journalists that were killed in 2024. Everyone else combined only killed 30%. And then they broke a record because Israel was slaughtering journalists at such a fever pitch. No one has ever seen journalists being murdered at this rate. Now, those are facts. Did you see that on cable news? No, you can't see it on cable news because cable news works for Israel. So if you said this on cable news, you'd probably be fired. And you'd say, well, but it's true. And your editors would say, yes, it's true. But facts have a well-known anti-Israel bias. So we're gonna say that you hate Jews and we're gonna ruin your life. And you're never allowed to work in news again because you actually report the news. So Israel doesn't just assassinate and literally kill journalists in Gaza. They also kill journalism across the West. Because anyone who correctly, factually objects to Israel will be labeled an anti-Semite by some Israel First executive here in America or in Britain, and they will fire you, and then the rest of the press will join in and call you an anti-Semite and try to ruin your life on behalf of Israel, because Israel despises journalism. Now, if Americans and the West found out what Israel was actually doing, including slaughtering journalists, well, they wouldn't support them because they're not a liberal democracy. They're not anything that they claim to be. They're not a special ally. They're the largest terrorist organization in the world. Terrorists are jealous of how many people Israel has killed and how many journalists Israel has killed. So, no, the #1 enemy of journalists across the world is the government of Israel. So that is super clear. In fact, there's a wonderful filmmaker, Robert Greenwald. He's at Brave New Films, and he did this really short documentary. It's only 41 minutes. Gaza journalists under fire. Please check it out. If you can make it through that 41 minutes and not be as opposed to Israel as I am, well, then I'll say, okay, at least you looked at the facts and at least you looked at what happens on the ground and you say you're okay with it. But I don't think almost anybody can make it out of that movie and not realize what Israel is doing to journalists and to human rights overall. So yeah, if they allow the journalists in, they will be completely surrounded by the IDF. If they go rogue and actually try to give you things that are true about Israel, there's an excellent chance Israel will literally murder them. Because that is what they've done to over 250 journalists already. So that's not an accident. It's because they do not want actual news coming out of Israel. Their only advantage, Sharon, is that they have been able to do overwhelming propaganda on behalf of Israel to keep people from finding out what Israel's up to. I mean, there's comical things in America, like they think, oh, in 1948, 750,000 Palestinians got up and decided to go for a picnic and said, you know what? Let Israel keep all of our homes. Don't worry about it. It's totally fine. We're the bad guys for even objecting to it. No, they were ethnically cleansed out of what is current day Israel. The only reason why you don't all know that is because Israel has been doing nothing but propaganda in the West for the entire time. And if you do something outside of that and you're anywhere near them, they will literally kill you, as they did with Shireen Abu Akleh and 250 journalists. And if you're here in the US, they'll try to get you fired. So that has been their strategy from day one. They will never veer from that strategy, because if you find out about the truth of Israel, you will not support Israel.
American media fully complicit in this. Let's take another social break. Much more to come.
All right, let's go to members on TYT.com. CK Progressive says, saw Anna's debate with Pearl Davis over the weekend. Anna won easily, and it was shocking how unprepared Pearl Davis was to debate Anna. So guys, when we do outside interviews, we put it up on TYT.com/press. I hope we can put that debate up because it was a political bloodbath. At the end of the, I've never seen a debate like that. At the end of the debate, one of the analysts said, you'd have to be the R word to think that Anna lost. And another one said, it's not fair. She's one of the Michael Jordans of debating in America. And so to see her like absolutely rout the other person was a joy to watch. They were arguing over feminism. They brought in this woman, Pearl, to say that women shouldn't have equal rights. I mean, how are you gonna win that debate anyway? So it's almost like the crowd felt bad for Pearl by the end. So check that out when you get a chance. Mongoose Dragon says Rubio is an evil little boy. Just kind of a hilarious way of putting it. Don Dada Dragon says, Cenk, I said if Renee Good was a Floridian, we would be talking about Florida's run over protesters law. In this guy's case, we would also talk about it. When the law first came out, I was against it. In this guy's case, I can understand it sort of. Wishing bloodshed isn't good for anyone. Yeah, guys, I hate those laws that allows people to run over protesters. It's mental, it's wildly illegal to have a law like that on the books. But it's true of everyone. If you, as I said in the first hour, if you're in a car and there's anybody around, protesters, ICE, it doesn't matter. Don't go anywhere, don't go anywhere. You'll be in a lot of trouble, and you physically and legally if you run over anyone. So don't do that. And also don't shoot women in the head who are unarmed 3 times. Like, it's amazing that we have to clarify that these days, but apparently we do. Eclectic wrote in, protests should always be peaceful. Once you use violence, you've lost the argument and done damage to your cause. That is 100% right. Asimov's Prophet says, can Renee's family, I already read that one. But Asimov's Prophet wrote back in, Cenk, so you might want to tell us what the line is when we should panic. I have the feeling that when we get there, we won't see you on the air anymore, or is that the line? No, guys, look. Lines are, if he doesn't follow the Supreme Court, if he doesn't follow Congress, and there's a couple of other bright lines. Once we've crossed that, that's the Rubicon. And so that still doesn't mean you do the protest in the wrong way, because then it'll be counterproductive. But I'll tell you all along what we have to do when we get there. But for now, peaceful protests, and they have to be peaceful. Anyone doing violence is undermining your cause and might literally be an agent for the other side. So keep it peaceful, but keep protesting. Nerd Ferguson says, we're about 2 years away from Trump having Dr. Evil trapdoors that drop his enemies from their chairs into shark pits. He almost suggested that, okay, not the trapdoor part, but the part with the sharks on their legs. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Sharon with you guys. Before we get to the rest of the news, I want to just read a couple of quick comments. Solo Rick, a new YouTube member, wrote in, guys, join the team. TYT is great. I just joined you. I will support Cenk and TYT team all day, every day. You're awesome, Solo Rick. We appreciate you. That's why God made that beautiful join button underneath the video on YouTube. Also, TYT.com/join. And Average Gaming said, it's crazy how just calling someone a terrorist eliminates all their rights. And that is exactly what we're worried about. An excellent call. And last one is Shaheen Kohani wrote in on Super Chat. Iran is completely different than Iraq/Afghanistan/Venezuela. Millions are on the streets, and Trump's intervention on limited targets is a massive help. You guys have made a wrong call. Love you and disagree. No, we will not be greeted as liberators the minute we start dropping bombs and innocent Iranians start getting killed. And it won't be done to help Iranians. You might legitimately think it's done to help Iranians. You very likely do, okay? But at the same time, there are forces that think, we don't want any democracy in Iran. What we want to do is get rid of this guy and put in a new king/Shah who works for very likely Israel, right? So, even if you hate this regime, bombing does not help get rid of the regime, it helps cement it. So that's my opinion, but I know folks are very passionate about it. All right, Sharon, what's next?
Las Culturistas.
Should we have listened to the populist message all along? Is that ultimately what would work for them? Yes. It's not going to be Gavin Newsom. And when anytime a politician is making it too obviously about themselves, I'm already done.
We're out.
Don't waste your money sending to Jasmine Crockett. Do not do it.
I must agree.
Comedians Bowen Yang, Matt Rogers have since apologized for telling their viewers not to waste their money on Representative Jasmine Crockett's Senate bid. Jank, your 2 cents.
Don't apologize. You had it right there. So look, it's not a matter of whether you're gonna waste your money or not on Jasmine Crockett. That's your decision to make, okay? But are they right to say we should go in a populist direction and be wary of politicians who are too egotistical and always making it about themselves? Of course they're right about that. What are you retracting that for? Well, we'll tell you why they retracted it and why it's a bad idea. Go ahead, Sean.
All right, so here's more context for that clip of Yang and Rogers. Listen.
Let me just qualify the Jasmine Crockett thing. She's not gonna win a Senate seat in Texas, you guys. Like if Beto O'Rourke couldn't do it, like Jasmine Crockett is not gonna do it. She is and it's nothing against her. It's just that she then rises up. Like I'm interested in this Tallarico guy from Texas.
Oh, I don't know him.
I'm just interested in him.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I haven't seen him before. It would be hard for them to define him as anything other than what he is, which is like a rising Democratic politician from someplace like Texas, who is like, yes, speaking a little bit to the middle, but at least he's someone that like we can't define already.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like Gavin Newsom is defined.
Yeah.
I believe Jasmine Crockett is defined.
Yep.
Like, I'm just trying to win here, and I really feel differently than we did in 2016. Like the way to win now is to like go with the energy.
So the 2 comedians also discussed the rise of populism, the fall of both identity politics and resistance politics over the last 10 years.
While there's a lot of crises in the world,
30 seconds.
The number one actionable thing that Gavin Newsom can do right now is text Savannah Guthrie and get whoever just did her vocal surgery. You can still dunk on Trump, which is apparently something that people still think is gonna like win, and not speaking directly actionably to people and their concerns, like say Bernie Sanders does, who is the only durable remaining politician over the last decade that's been like consistent and is still around in a meaningful way. The reason we were Hillary stands is because at the time,
it was like
the Bernie bro thing. Remember, you remember 2016?
I remember.
Like it was like it got a little thick there with like the way people were talking on the Bernie side, and it was misogynistic and it was tough. And I think at the time there was a very girl bossy, like
that was
Obama core-ish, like, hey,
right?
Don't talk like that. We're gonna crash the glass ceiling, girl.
And
I pull my hair back, check my nails. It was a very that, and so I don't look back in regrets because we were part of the culture we were part of. Should we have listened to the populist message all along? Is that ultimately what would work for them? Yes.
Yang and Rogers faced backlash for their remarks. Some accused them of being racist and misogynist. The comment was uncomfortable to listen to, one Spotify user commented under the episode. Another comment on Instagram read, so unbelievably disappointed coming from a person in a marginalized community. I expect much better from you and Bowen. 2 comedians have since apologized, as we said, for their remarks. Rogers stated this: I'm a very progressive person who cares deeply about winning these elections, but my phrasing was not right. I will be more thoughtful, I promise. I have great respect and admiration for Representative Crockett, and I regret that my words suggested otherwise. I just want us to win, and I will be better at finding ways to help. Yang wrote, should not have cursorily weighed in on this, understanding the platform, and we'll use it more responsibly. I don't know if he's sorry or not, but they both put in their statements there, Jank. A mistake. I mean, I don't know how you can go 10 toes down. They believe what they're saying to be absolutely the gospel. And so I don't really need an apology for that. What say you?
No, I want to ask you, Sharon, first real quick. The Crockett people are making, or I don't know that it's the Crockett people to be fair, but her defenders are making it about race. Did you get any racial tinge from that?
The only thing I will say, and I talked about this with Senator Nita Turner earlier on Indisputable. Listen, the Beto O'Rourke reference, I'm not gonna say bothered me. It tweaked me a little bit because if he can't win, why can't she? Listen, anything can happen at any given time. It's unlikely. Let's just put it that way. But I do think that we put ourselves in kind of this box when are we not allowed to criticize her because she looks more like me? Are we not allowed to have honest conversations? I do think that that's kind of how you get here with a Hillary Clinton or whoever the next one is who potentially can't win. Let the people decide.
Okay, so that's an interesting point of view, and I'm glad you said that. So I didn't pick up on it much, but different perspectives could give you a different read on it, right, and a different look on it. What I perceived it as was Beto O'Rourke was kind of moderate to begin with, and Jasmine Crockett is kind of a fire breather on culture war issues, identity politics, etc. Now, Colin Allred was in the race. He's also African American, but he's just a normal corporate Democrat. So, you'd have to get into what did you think about Colin Allred, etc. But to me, the much larger point has absolutely nothing to do with race. It has to do with what kind of Democrat do you want? Tallarico appears to be a little bit more populist. I want to find out more about him. That's interesting. Is it that we can't win Texas with a woman? That's empirically not true. Ann Richards was a Democratic governor of Texas, right? Can we not win in Texas with minorities? Empirically untrue. We have won many times with Latino candidates, black candidates, etc. That's not the issue at all. But can we win with corporate candidates, or should we go in a populist direction? That was the heart of the conversation that they were having, and they were totally right. They were wrong about Hillary back in the day, and I love that they've admitted that. And by the way, guys, just as I say to the people who voted for Trump, who now have misgivings, I say, take yes for an answer. Wonderful, come on in, right? I say the same thing to the people that we fought within the party that were on Hillary Clinton's side. Hey, you've had a change of heart and you realize that the populist was the right way to go and we would have won that election and we should go in that direction to win the next election. Wonderful. Bygones be bygones. I don't care about those old fights at all. Let's just go in the right direction now. So the reason they're having to backtrack is because a lot of those establishment folks, unfortunately, the voters are still there. And guys, I got open minds for you. I got open hearts for you. I know you want to do the right thing, but stop beating back influencers, hosts, pundits on your side that happen to disagree with you. Because what you're doing is you're driving out all good, healthy differences of opinion within the party. You're driving it out of the party. And then what are you left with? Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. And these have not worked for us. And the most important thing in Texas is who's going to win. And who's going to win is the person who is more populist. There's no way they're voting for a corporate Democrat in Texas. It's not gonna happen. So I wish they had not walked it back, but don't lose sight of the silver lining here. A lot of shows like theirs, I was just on I've had a podcast last week. They're in the same exact place where they're saying, we were wrong to be so diehard about Hillary and the others. We should have been more open-minded. That's a beautiful development. So if you're a progressive or a populist or just a Democrat who cares, take that and run. That's a great day in America.
Yeah, when you allow healthy debate, I do think that's when the strongest candidates emerge and you don't have this closed view and like what hit us come election day.
100%. All right, everybody check out Sharon on Rebel Headquarters. That's also on YouTube. When we come back, we're gonna give you the revolution. Ryan Grimm from Drop Site News is gonna join us. They have broken a series of stories about Israel that is devastating and about Jeffrey Epstein as well. We wanna talk to him about it. And now they're being sued by some of the pro-Israel forces. Of course. So there's a lot to talk about. Ryan Grimm when we return. back on TYT. Now, we're going to do the revolution. Joining me is Ryan Grimm. He is one of the founders of Dropsite News, which has been doing brilliant reporting on really almost all of the international stories, including Israel, and has been doing great reporting on the Epstein files. Ryan's also the author of We've Got People, The Squad, This Is Your Country on Drugs. He's co-host of Breaking Points, former TYT contributor. We've Got People, Young Turks and Young Turks fans are in that book, so that's another good reason why you should check it out. But Ryan, welcome back, brother.
Always good to be here.
All right, good to have you. All right, so I want to start with all the reporting that you guys have been doing about Epstein. So you've uncovered all of these amazing emails where Epstein is in the middle of the Iran-Contra affair. As far as I know, the number of civilians in the middle of the Iran-Contra affair is 0. So he's trying to get Israel to buy cyber weapons. He's trying to get America to bomb Syria and Iran on behalf of Israel. He's got Israeli spies staying there. He's got Ehud Barak, the former prime minister. This thing's over. You guys proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt, yet no one else in news is following up on your reporting. So what in the world's going on?
You tell me. Yeah, it's an interesting question, and what's interesting is that there's a lot more that we can still uncover, and we have a lot of stories that are still in the works. The documents, the correspondence that we're basing our reporting on, are public. Now we have some, excellent, researchers and some excellent tech folks who are, who have made it, searchable and have really kind of helped us in ways that, have gotten us kind of over the hump. But we don't have more resources than the New York Times or the Washington Post or Bloomberg. So, and I don't know. I think it's just too much. It's just too uncomfortable for the press to go there.
Yeah, it's interesting because people are seeing it anyway. Because online media is so much stronger these days than it used to be. So I was talking to a supporter of Israel today, and he's like, "Well, obviously Epstein was an asset." Right? He's like, "What do you want me to say?"
That seems clear,
right? Yeah. So okay, but you're generally very well respected in journalist circles in DC. That's my experience, having seen people interact with you throughout the years, both in person and online, etc. So like with a David Sirota, who's just, no offense to you, just as good as you, great journalist, right?
Better even, he's tremendous, yeah.
Yeah, but with him, they're always like, Sirota. Like they've always hated him, right? But with you, they're like, oh, Ryan broke a story about, Kavanaugh, for example, and that became one of the biggest stories in the nation, right? So they take that seriously. In this case, are you getting any feedback from them? Like, we'd love to cover it, but we can't, or how dare you, I can't believe you turned into an anti-Semite, or anything?
No, rank and file reporters and just the people that I know in the industry have all said, like, this is great work. Wish we were doing this. This is incredible stuff. And the problem for some of these news organizations is, I think that the bigger obvious problems are the ones that drive it. But within a news organization, you might have hundreds of reporters, but only a few of them could be on the Epstein beat. You know what I mean? They might want to write about it, but it's just outside of their beat. There's an interesting distinction that some newsrooms draw between political reporting and national security reporting. And if you've noticed, the Epstein coverage is in the desk of the political bureaus in this country. So, what is the impact for Democrats in the midterms or Republicans in the midterms? What is the relationship between the files and President Trump? What about Epstein and the Clintons? Like, and how does this affect voters' attitudes towards the parties? Like, literally the political teams are the ones that are assigned to cover the Epstein beat. The national security teams are distinct in general from at these major papers and at the networks, and they are not allowed to. They're not supposed to be covering this because it's It's in the realm of the politics, and so that keeps it also clean. Like keeps it out of the hairier questions of who was he working for, what was he actually doing when he wasn't doing his child sex trafficking. So that's kind of how it functionally keeps the stories, keeps them pumping out the kinds of stories that you read, like the salacious. They're good stories, like Larry Summers doing gross things and he has to step down. Like, that's a good story. Although I think actually the Harvard Crimson led the way on that, not the actual news media. The news media followed the Harvard Crimson there. Right. So that's part of it. Yeah, like that's how they functionally divide it. So, but there really isn't a divide. Like, if you think about it, that goes back to how these newspapers understand their relationship with American empire and American power. Like that it's separate from politics. Yeah, like that's not something that.
Look, Ryan, I think your explanation. I think your explanation is excellent, and I'm going to add to it. But it's just an excuse. I don't think that they actually believe it. For example,
at the top, right?
Yeah, when you talk about, hey, when you guys are covering bills, well, I've asked reporters in DC, why don't you ever talk about money in politics? Because what drives the legislation is the donors, pretty much 100%. So when you do a story that doesn't include the donors, it's kind of like a fantastical story. It's made up, it's fiction, because it doesn't get to the number one issue. They go, well, that's not my beat. Money in politics is not my beat. Right. Congress is my beat. Well, then if you just kind of like isolate money in politics so it's not in anyone's beat, and you isolate Epstein so it's almost not in anyone's beat, that's a perfectly convenient excuse not to cover the two giant stories. Right. So that's a clever way that they've structured it. But why did they structure it that way? Because they don't want to cover those issues. And in the case of Epstein and what Drop Site News has proven definitively, well, there's no question that after you read the Drop Site stories that Epstein works with intelligence agencies. He could. There are plenty of other questions. He could be an asset. He could be an agent. He could be something else. But is he working with intelligence? No question. He could be CIA. He could be Mossad. He could be both. I don't know, right? And was the actual sex trafficking part of that scheme to work with intelligence agencies? That's not perfectly clear, right? Right. And but the fact that he was with intelligence is crystal clear. And I think that what a lot of the editors think is, well, if people find out either the CIA or Israel launched a plot to rape young American girls to get blackmail on political figures to manipulate them, they will either hate the CIA or Israel, and we don't want them hating either one of those things while we're pretending to do objective news.
On a personal, professional level, that's the kind of story that can end your career if you might not even have to make a mistake on it. It could just straight up end your career. If you do make a mistake, just a conventional, you get a detail wrong here or there, that could be the end of you. There's room for error in your standard political stories. The horse race, the who's up, who's down. Like you screw one of those stories up, hey man, brush yourself off. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll get them tomorrow. That's just how this goes. If you screw up a story about Epstein and his ties to the CIA or Israel, you're never working again. And even if you don't screw it up, you might not be working again.
Yeah. So Ryan, you're saying out loud what people are not allowed to say. I've said it out loud. Now you've said it out loud, which is, who are we kidding? If you do a story that's critical of Israel, your chance of getting fired is sky high. It's not guaranteed, but it is a significant percentage, even if you get all the details right. And look, you're closer to the reporters than I am, but I know a ton of reporters. It is my experience, both having worked at MSNBC and current TV and radio and online in every aspect. And I'm curious of your take on it. I mean, you kind of just stated it already, but I want people at home to understand it. My sense is, talking to all those reporters, they give me looks like the other day I was at ABC and I said, you can't really cover Epstein being connected to Israel, right? And the reporter went like she didn't even want to say anything out loud. Like there is a palpable fear among the American press that if you say anything wrong about Israel or perceived wrong, you're done for life. Is that your experience as well?
In general, it's in that direction, yeah. And there's all sorts of tripwires when it comes to coverage of Israel that have been set up over the years, where reporters or politicians, for that matter, might trip over one, and all of a sudden, then they didn't even realize they're not even doing it. And all of a sudden, they're being told that they're anti-Semitic or whatever. There was that amazing moment in 2018 when AOC was doing that firing line interview, and in response to one of the questions, she used the word Palestine, and the interviewer stopped her and was like, and I was later told somebody got in her ear, like got in the interviewer's ear from the control room, like, stop her on the word Palestine, stop her. So it's like 20 people in this studio against this one candidate, and Pouncin is like, did you say the word Palestine? What do you mean by that? And you could see this deer in the headlights look that AOC got, where she's like, it's going through my, like, did I say something wrong? Like, did I step on a tripwire? What, like, how is this wrong? What is wrong here? And she just wanted to like move on from there. And that's how a lot of the reporters feel as well. It's like, there's a lot else I want to cover. Let's just move on.
Yeah. And that's exactly how Israel intimidates and bullies our press into never writing anything critical of Israel. So they just, and part of the reason they don't tell you that is because if they told you that, they'd be fired, right? So that's the same tripwire. And I want to go to one of the consequences for one of your reporters in a second, but one more thing for the audience to know is that the tripwires sometimes are, accidentally there, and sometimes they're kind of there on purpose. So for example, 94% of Congress, according to a Guardian piece, gets money from AIPAC or the Israeli lobby. But if you say that 94% of Congress gets money from Israel, you'll be labeled an anti-Semite, and they'll say that's a trope of Jews controlling Washington. But nobody said Jews, we said Israel, the government of Israel, and the forces that are trying to help the government of Israel is doing that.
And then they'll go a layer on top of that and say, well, how dare you? These are Americans who are pro-Israel.
Yeah,
it's not Israel.
Right, of course.
It's like, well,
and that's another tripwire.
Right? You're in constant coordination.
Yeah, and then you'll say, well,
yes, technically it's Americans. So exactly. So, and then the reporter who's just starting out or wants to rise up the chain, they're like, you know what, forget it.
Yeah, you'll say, Israel killed 20,000 children. Well, that's true, that's a fact, but blood libel. But wait a minute, nobody said anything about drinking blood of children. That's mental. That's not. That is an anti-Semitic trope from the past, but nobody said that. You're just using that as a way to hide. Honestly, I think they use Jewish Americans as human shields, and they hide behind them.
I saw some MAGA guy, I think it was Jack Posobiec, or however you say his last name, call criticism of ICE a blood libel recently. Like, oh my God, we've gone around the bend with this. Like, how is that? It's just become like a phrase you now throw out for criticism that you don't like.
Yeah, absurd. So now, tell us about what's going on with the BBC. So Owen does a story about the BBC. Well, I'll let you tell. You tell us what happened and what the reaction was.
Well, he had been working on this investigation for a while, and he reached out to us. It was an investigation into bias inside the BBC when it comes to their coverage of Gaza and the West Bank, and he had many BBC insiders who wanted to speak to him, but he knew that there was a high likelihood that he was going to get sued if he ran this piece. And we Jeremy and I and Oscar, we said, well, that's what we're here for. Like, that's why we were set up, so that there's an institution that is willing to publish stories that are fair and accurate and hard hitting, but that other people won't publish because of either fear of professional consequences or fear of litigation. Like, so if we don't do this, like we don't have a point. So we're like, let's do this. We lawyered it to hell, made sure it was as fair as it could possibly be. Everybody's got an opportunity to respond, publish it, and sure enough, he's getting sued by one of the editors who was named in the story. And the lawyers behind this editor are UK lawyers for Israel. So he's deep-pocketed attorneys on the other side of this, and they're only suing him, in the UK. They're not suing us directly. Because in the United States, if they tried to sue us in the United States, the case would be thrown right out immediately. But the UK libel laws are much crazier. So they feel like they have a chance to win there. But we had pledged, like, when we published it, if you get sued, we'll back you in court. So it's still winding its way through this Byzantine UK defamation hearing. I'm getting a real education in how interesting that is, and how set up it is for plaintiffs to be able to say that even if there isn't anything incorrect in the story, they still feel hurt by it and harmed by it, and so they then can still sue. I believe that we're going to win, and I think it'll be an important case to win, and I think it would be a very important case to lose as well, because if you can't say that the BBC is biased towards Israel when it comes to their reporting on Gaza and the West Bank, then you can't say anything, because that's the most straightforwardly true and obvious statement that I can even think of when it comes to the BBC's coverage.
Yeah, I'm curious about that case. That's another case where they are using a second weapon, and I want to explain that in a second. But in terms of the details of that case, what did Owen allege that BBC was doing? And is the BBC saying that's factually incorrect, outrageous, we never aired any of the things he's saying? Or are they saying it's relatively true, but our feelings were hurt?
The latter, for the most part. They're saying that it's inaccurate to say that they're biased. Like, that's the only inaccuracy that they are claiming exists in the 10,000 plus word story. Most people would not consider that to be a fact that is correct or incorrect. Most people would consider that to be a subjective opinion of, an informed subjective opinion. Like, he spoke with, more than a dozen, current and also many former BBC journalists who believed that their coverage, that what they were seeing on the ground was not being reflected in the coverage because it was being distorted up the editorial process. Like, that was their belief, and that's what he reported. They're claiming that they are wrong, that is incorrect. So it's very interesting, because in the U.S., you can imagine that even today, like, that would be thrown out. They said, how on earth are you even bringing a case here? Like, this is what people say. This is their experience. They literally worked there. Their quote unquote lived experience. Yeah. You can disagree. You can have your say. You can be quoted saying you disagree. You can give examples of why it's not the case. But it's well within the rights of a publisher to publish these opinions. I believe that's true, not just in the US, but also in the UK. And I really hope that we get all the way to the end of this and are able to prove that.
So Ryan, I want to note two ironies here, and one maybe that it helps you, but let's see. One is they say, well, the editors of the BBC seem to have told these reporters to shut up about Israel, and now they're suing because they said, well, we should want you to shut up about us telling you to shut up about Israel. Like, that's a meta irony in there.
It is.
Yeah, the second one might be slightly helpful. They're suing you guys because they're saying they were defamed when you called them biased in favor of Israel. But they're suing you for being biased. So couldn't you just sue them back and say, if we're guilty, then you're guilty?
That's true. Yeah, how dare you suggest that our reporting is biased?
Yeah, I think you should do a countersuit, because that way
it's outrageous.
Yeah, either way you win.
Yeah, right. Or fair point. Okay. I'm jumping right on the lawyer chain. The problem is, every time you talk to these lawyers, there goes another couple $1,000. So this better work, brother. Otherwise, I'm hitting you up for the.
All right,
that didn't work. That'll be 2,500 jank.
Okay, we got to go, Ryan.
For the 5-minute interview, for the 5-minute meeting with the lawyers.
But seriously, guys. So one way is editors, producers, executives go, don't talk about Israel, otherwise your job is in jeopardy. The second way is what Ryan is referring to here. Anna was on with Alan Dershowitz on a segment and he kept saying, "Oh, I want the Epstein files released because I want the names of the victims." And we're like, "Why do you want the names of the victims public? That's the one thing everyone agrees should not be made public." He's like, "I want to sue them. When we should have the right to sue them." Because lawsuits are another weapon for Israel first. If we can't get you fired, or even if we do get you fired, then we're going to sue you on top, so that we not only cut off your means of survival, like literally, having an income, but then we put an enormous amount of debt on your head, and especially because you won't be able to hire a lawyer, and we have all the top lawyers on our side. So there is this concerted effort to pulverize any critic of Israel in America and the West. And ironically, if you point that out, they go, aha, that's another one of those tripwires and tropes, etc. So it's deeply frustrating. And for you guys to do all the brilliant and brave reporting that you've done on it is sorely needed. So everybody check out Drop Site News. Just Ryan, you guys are working on amazing stories. It's not just about Israel or Epstein. Check out what they're writing about Venezuela, the UAE, and so many other countries. But give us something hot from today. What's Drop Site News working on?
Oh, amazing piece today by Iona Craig, who's one of the best reporters who's covered Yemen ever. What's going on between Saudi Arabia and the UAE right now is going to change the politics of the region for 10, 20 years ahead. There was this tight relationship between Saudi and the UAE where they were reshaping the Middle East kind of in their image, and then linking up with Israel through the UAE through the Abraham Accords. And the UAE started believing basically that it was kind of like the Israel of the Arab world, and that rules didn't apply to it. They have fueled the genocide in Sudan. They fueled really the breakup of Libya. They've sowed chaos all throughout Syria, and finally in Yemen they started fighting with the Saudis in southern Yemen. The Houthis control northern Yemen, they control southern, and the Saudis were like, hold on a second. Oh no, this is not happening. They started bombing the UAE. The UAE's entire Yemen project, what they've been working on for 10 or 15 years, ended in 48 hours. Now a bunch of their allied officials are now stuck in God knows where in Riyadh, because Mohammed bin Salman did this thing where he invites people to negotiate and then just locks them up, like he did with the rich folks and the rich Saudis and the Ritz. He did it, remember, with the Lebanese prime minister, invited him to Riyadh and then just locked him up and made him announce he's resigning. He just did that to like 50 of these UAE, basically like proxies. And so now the entire that entire structure that has been built up over the last 10, 15 years is crumbling. So that Iona Craig's story is awesome. I would suggest people go check that one out.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that one because I was reading it earlier today and I was thinking,
it's crazy, right?
Yeah, UAE and Saudi Arabia split up and attack each other. I did not see that coming because they're usually a tag team in the Middle East, and a lot of people don't know that they secretly support Israel. And so their leadership does, and they don't care about the Palestinians at all. So like there's just brilliant reporting all around there, and that is a fascinating development in Yemen. We'll see how that goes. And by the way, I mean, the Saudis invite you over and then kidnap you. The Israelis are like, oh yeah, peace negotiations, and just kill you. Yeah, so what great allies we have.
Yeah, watch yourself. Yeah.
So be careful if you got invited to anywhere, including a wedding. Ask him if it's a red one. Ryan Grim from Drop Site News. Obviously, as you can tell from this interview, you should be checking out Drop Site News. All right, thank you, Ryan. We appreciate you as always.
Thanks so much, Cenk.
All right, guys, we need you to have an excellent day. Come back tomorrow. We'll do Operation Joy for you, and Anna will be back as well. We'll see you then.